All right. Hello, everybody, and thank you for attending today's 2024 CMS Merit Tips and Tricks webinar. My name is Jacob Webb, and I work for Battelle, and I am the task lead for the Measures Management System Pre-Rulemaking task. I am here today with Mel Gross of CMS to go over some of the ins and outs of the Merit tool and to help you get started with your submissions into Merit. Next slide, please. I just want to start with a few housekeeping items before we dive into our slides and the demo today. First, all audio lines are going to be muted for today's presentation. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to submit them using the Q&A function that you should see at the bottom of your screen. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted to the Pre-Rulemaking resource webpage found on the MMS Hub in the following weeks. Since a huge chunk of today's meeting will be a live demonstration, there will be no slides available today. After today's demo, we will conclude with a live Q&A of in-scope questions. Please note that if we do not get to all your questions live, and it is in scope of today's presentation, we will answer it via Q&A summary document following the event. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned on the last slide, we will be using that Q&A function. So to ask a question, click on the Q&A button, type in your question, and then press that submit button. And with that, I'd like to move to the next slide and introduce Mel to kick us off with the agenda.
Hi, thanks so much, Jake. As he has mentioned, my name is Mel Gross, and I am the CMS task lead for pre-rulemaking activities, and I work with Battelle on these activities. So today we're going to be talking about, excuse me, what CMS Merit is, some of its features, updates that have been made for the 2024 cycle for measure submissions, and then Battelle will do a live demonstration within CMS Merit. So some of the things that will be in the live demonstration, which hopefully you all will find very helpful, is just simply logging on to Merit or requesting an account, creating a submission, and then other things within creating a submission that seem to be, interesting to people or people have had questions about. So this will help clarify them. Such functions as copying and pasting from other documents, changing information that you've saved from a prior submission, adding or deleting an attachment, viewing the information that you've submitted, exporting or making a copy of your submission, changing that information, and adding a co-submitter. And then we'll give you a link to some resources that might help you as well. And then at the end, we hope to go over and have some time for some questions and answers. Next slide. So what is Merit? If you are new to this process and you are not familiar, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services has a tool referred to as the MUC Entry Review Information Tool, and it is a web-based tool. And it's used for measure developers to submit their clinical quality and efficiency measures for consideration by CMS. CMS Merit is also used for facilitating the searches of previously submitted measures from, either this year, or you can go back and look at previous year's submissions or candidate submissions. Following the closing of the submissions, then CMS programs review those measures for consideration in their programs. So just to give a little bit of background, CMS has been opened since January 31st of 2024. It will close May 10th, 2024, so not far off from today, and it will be open until 8 p.m. on May 10th, Eastern Time. Next slide. So some of the Merit features that are offered, we consider to have improved the submission and review process. So one, there are automatic completeness checks. So it's going to allow for checks for required measure information. You can save a submission and come back later. So you don't have to sit and complete your entire submission all in one sitting. You can review and track your progress. It's an easy to navigate interface and incorporates human-centered design principles. There's an improved copy and paste functionality. So it gives you the ability to copy and paste from a Word document into Merit. And then you have the ability to print a PDF version of your submission and save that for your documents. Next slide. So some updates that we wanted to share about Merit for the 2024 measure cycle. There will be fewer required fields to complete, which is always a good thing, less burden for the submitters. Background questions have been updated to refer to the new pre-rulemaking measure review process instead of the formerly known measures application partnership. New required questions will capture patient surveys and tools and whether or not they've been translated or validated in Spanish. And there is a revised stage of development question, and that will allow submitters to indicate the completed stage of development. Next slide. So this year, we just want to request, or CMS is wanting to request that if you have attachments and you have the ability to do so, we would like for those attachments to be 508 compliant. And we asked for that just because it's easier to allow for transparency and sharing the information if the information is public. And being 508 compliant just allows for us to get more meaningful feedback from stakeholders and interested parties. We've also included resources, which you can see here, the section 508.gov website. There is a CMS Creating Accessible Products link that you can check out, and then HHS Accessibility and Section 508 Policy. Just for your reference, so that you understand if you're not familiar with what 508 compliance is, you can review those resources. Next slide. All right, I'm going to hand it back to Batel and to Jake to do the live demonstration of Merit, and I really hope that this is helpful for you all. Thank you so much for attending. Back to you, Jake.
Thank you, Mel. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen real quick. And so while that's popping up, I want to start here just on the Merit homepage. The Merit homepage itself actually has a few resources that I just want to point out that might be helpful for you if you get stuck while you're submitting your measure. First one is right here in the middle of the screen. It's actually a link to the pre-rulemaking webpage on the MMS Hub. If you were on for the pre-rulemaking public webinar, this looks pretty familiar. I just want to quickly touch on a couple of the items. So it takes you to a couple tabs, which the first one being an overview. There's also a guidance for measure submitters, a measure priorities, and also a muck list and recommendation report. If you scroll to the bottom, there is a resources button as well. And if you click on it, there is a link to additional pre-rulemaking resources. This is actually where we house the recording for today, the Q&A summary, and then also the slides, the recording, and the Q&A summary for the pre-rulemaking public webinar that we had a couple weeks back. So if you need reference for those, that's where that's at. On here, I just want to click on the guidance for measure submitters to point out that this is a great resource if there are some templates that you will need for your submission. They're found here, such as like the Merit template, the quick start guide, which both of those are also found on the Merit homepage. Also, such as the peer review journal article template. I just quickly wanted to touch on that just to kind of point out this website. If you're not super familiar with it, I'd recommend taking a look at it. Also, just below it, there's actually, as I mentioned, the template for the Merit data template, and then also the quick start guide. So just really quickly touching on those. The data template has all the same information that you're going to find within the Merit tool. Some people do find it helpful to have this handy next to them as they're filling out Merit, just so they can see notes or definitions or where other questions are located within the sections and subsections. So here you can kind of see, here's a section of properties with a subsection of the measure information. You can see which are required fields based off that red asterisk. And And then also there's the guidance, which is also again found in the merit tool under the definition. Again, some people like to have this handy next to them just so they don't have to keep on clicking on other buttons. Also, some people like to fill out their measure submissions on the template before they submit to merit, which then you can use that copy and paste functionality. The other tool is that submitter's quick start guide. This is updated annually. As you can see, it was updated in January of 2024. It's a tool that really helps you walk through the merit platform. It's very similar to what we'll be going over today. So not only will you have today's presentation, but you'll also have this as a reference if, in a couple weeks when you start to present or to start submitting, you can kind of go back to both of these resources. So it's got things such as, getting access to CMS merit. Once you get that access, how do you set up your password or that two-factor authentication? It's also going to go over how to submit a measure, how to add a co-submitter, and a couple other things that we're going to go over today. But just for example, if you're wanting some additional information on submitting a measure, if you click on it, it'll actually kind of give you step-by-step instructions on kind of that process. So again, I just wanted to point out a couple resources that we have just on that main homepage that you could go to. I also want to point out, if you go up to the top right to the About and go to Contact Us, there is some information about how the best way to contact us is. You'll see that there's an email, there's also a submission platform, and then there's also a Call Us. I just want to mention that the email is probably the best option for communication with us for a couple of different reasons. The biggest one being, if you have a question or an issue pops up, you can actually screenshot that and send it in your email. This helps us and our team better understand your question or issue and to identify that issue in a faster manner. The calling option actually does not take you to a live agent. I just want to mention that, especially as we're getting closer to the deadline. It'll take you to a voicemail box that we do check, but we do check that the email pretty often. So we just recommend that the best way to communicate with us is that mmssupport@patel.org. If we go back to the home screen, if you do not already have a merit account, I recommend that you create one sooner than later, as it does take about 24 hours for your account to process. If you do need an account, the easiest way to do it is just coming over here and clicking that Request an Account button. And then it'll ask you for some personal information like your first and last name, your company, email, and your phone number. And it's going to ask what site you would like access to. I just want to note, if you have access to a CMS account, that doesn't mean that you have access to Merit already, even though you have the same login and two-factor authentication codes. So if you didn't already sign up for Merit, you do have to sign up for one. So whichever tool you want, if you want both, you can do it at the same time to help save you some time down the road. And then you'll click that Submit Request. In about 24 hours, you'll get an email response on how to create your password and how to download the Google Authenticator app. So now I'm actually going to go ahead and log into Merit real quick so we can kind of go through that actual tool. So let me log in real fast. All right. So once you're logged in, CMS Merit is broken down into 3 tabs. You'll see up here, there's a My Submissions, a 2024 Candidate Measures, and a Past Candidate Measures. And I just want to go through each of them really quickly. So the My Submissions tab is actually the default tab that you'll see when you log in. This is where you'll see the measures that you are creating and you're planning on submitting. This tab really helps you just separate your submissions from the rest for easy navigation. It's also really helpful because this is where you'll see the status of your measures from this tab as well. So you can kind of see here, I have 2 measures that I'm currently working on that are in my submissions tab. And if we kind of look over here, it kind of gives you a quick synopsis of kind of your measure, some basic information like what measure type, main, what program it is in. You'll also see over here in the corner where the status of your measure is. So you kind of see that there's an in progress. This one is currently in the 1st and 2nd level review. There's a CMS review, and then there's an accepted, rejected, final decision. So you can kind of quickly see where it is in the process. This also shows you all the attachments that you've added. It also shows you some activities, so some comments and stuff that we'll get to in just a little bit. The 2024 Candidate Measures tab is where you'll start to see 2024 submissions being listed. You'll see all the different measures that will be submitted along with yours in this location. At this moment, there are no submissions. So right now you're kind of just seeing the default page. But as measures are being submitted, you should start to see them being posted here. So you can kind of review and see those in this location. Then the last tab is going to be that Past Candidate Measure tab. And as you might remember from either the public webinar or even the slides earlier, Merit is not only a measure submission tool, but it is a repository of past MUC submissions. So from this tab, you can actually filter using various filters to find past Merit submissions, while also being able to add and remove columns of interest. One thing that's nice about this is that once you add your columns and your filters, you're actually able to export an Excel file of that information if you would like, or if you're just looking for one specific measure, you can actually export a PDF of that measure info as well. So just really quickly, I just want to show you kind of the filters and the columns and how easy it is to kind of filter and search if that's something that you need to do. So let's just say that I want to find, let's say, an outcome ECQM that was submitted to the hospital inpatient quality reporting program, and let's say in 2022. So right now we can kind of see without any filters, there's about over 3,000 results. So coming to the filters, I want to filter by the 2022. The programs, I would like to do the hospital inpatient quality reporting. Measure types, I'm looking for outcomes. And then I want to find if it's an ECQM. So just using these filters, we went from over 3,000 down to 4 results. And really quickly, you can kind of see the default columns are, what year was it submitted, the MUC ID, the title, what programs, measure type, stewards, and was it added to the MUC list. You are able to edit these. So if you come up to the show hide columns, you can go ahead and add any of these in here. For the sake of this example, I'm going to add description. Once I add that, you can see that another column pops out. So if I would like to download all 4 of these results, I can just come up to the export to Excel. And when I click on that, it actually will download an Excel file of all this information. Whatever you put as your columns is what will be exported. But let's just say that you don't want all 4. You were just looking for one specific measure. You can actually, let's say if we were looking for this hospital harm acute kidney injury, I can actually click on it. It'll pop up all the information that was submitted. And you can either go through it this way, or there's this export measures button up in the top corner that if we click on it, it'll actually download a PDF version, very similar to when you finish your submission. It'll look almost the exact same way. So you can download this and you can save it and use this if you'd like. So it's a very easy way to kind of filter and find past candidate measures if you need to. So now let's actually go ahead and dive into, creating and submitting that measure. So when you first create an account, before you actually make a measure, you're going to see on the My Submissions page something similar to this 2024 candidate measure, where in the middle you're going to have a Submit a Measures button. You'll also have up here in the top right a Submitting a New Measures button. Once you actually create a measure, you'll start to get this layout where you'll have measures on the side. So let's say in this case, I'm going to submit a new measure. I'm going to click this button. 2 options are going to pop up. One being submitting a new measure, which means that you're submitting a measure from scratch that's not previously been submitted in Merit. It more or less is just saying that all the boxes are going to be blank for you to fill out. So you have a clean blank slate. Submitting from an existing measure is more or less you're getting a measure that was previously submitted. So kind of thinking about it is, maybe last year you submitted a measure and it wasn't accepted, and you did some additional testing and you would like to resubmit. Rather than starting from scratch, this is a way that you can pre-populate past information that you can kind of just build off of. I'm not going to go ahead and I'm not going to click on it just because it takes a couple minutes for it to populate all 3,000 of the past measures. But kind of just quickly talking through it, if you click on that submitting from an existing measures button, it's going to ask you to search by either a past MUC ID or a past measure title. So if you already know what those are, you can go ahead and put those in, or you can use that last tab with the past MUC measures to kind of help search and try to find the information you need. Once you kind of submit that and you click the search, it's going to populate related field items, and it's going to show you the year of submission. It's going to show you the MUC ID. It'll show you the title, what program it was submitted to, who submitted it, and then any comments. So this is just a way to help verify and make sure that this is the right measure that you are looking for. Once you find the right measure that you want to use, there's going to be a button that says you'll start from this measure. So when you click it, it then will generate all that information from the past, and then it'll look very similar to the process I'm going to show you in a minute. I do just want to mention, though, that if you choose to use this form of completing merit, that over the years, merit templates do change, and the system does its best to translate those past templates into the current model. It's always best, though, to review all the fields to make sure that the info was submitted and translated over as you expected. I also just want to mention that attachments do not clone over, and all attachments will need to be resubmitted through the process. Let's actually go ahead and dig into one of these and kind of look at, once we create a measure, kind of what that looks like. So I'm going to come to the demo measure 1. And let me go ahead and click this edit button. So from here, we can kind of see the general layout, and this will look kind of the same for all of them. But you'll see on the left-hand side that there's a navigation bar that shows all the fields and that are listed in merit. And they're broken down into sections and subsections. So you can kind of see a section of properties, and then these are all the subsections. And then, same thing with steward, and you click the plus sign and it'll have the subsections as well. You are able to skip around as you would like. It doesn't have to be in specific order. You can, if you want to go from measure information to groups, you are able to click on that and it'll take you right there, and you can come right back. You'll probably notice on the left-hand side, you'll see that there's a pencil and there's also some green check marks. The pencil means that you are still working on that section. It means that there's something in that subsection that you're still working on that is not complete yet. The green check marks show that everything in that section has been completed and you're good to go. At the top, you're going to see your MUC ID and the title that you'll have. Down here, you'll see the measure title. As you update this section, it will change up here as well. To the right of that, you're going to see a button to delete your measure, or also you're going to see that button to export your measure. Just want to note that the export measure is going to export whatever you have currently at the moment. It does export as a PDF, so you can't export, add information, and then copy and paste it back in. Just below the export is a yellow save button. I just want to take this moment to recommend that as you move throughout this process, that it's always best to save more often than not, just in case you run into some technical issues, because Merit does not automatically save. And Merit does have an inactivity timeout of about 15 minutes. So it's best, as you're going through maybe each subsection, to go ahead and save as you go. There's a save button at the top. And if you scroll to the bottom, there's actually going to be a button down here that's save and continue. This is really nice because as you finish a section, when you click that, it'll actually do a quick check to make sure that all required fields are completed. And if not, it'll let you know. If it's good, it'll save and then move you to the next subsection. Required fields similar to the template are noted by this red asterisk. And you are going to see right here that there's a note about the copying and pasting. Although we do have that copy and paste feature, sometimes just right clicking and putting paste will add hidden figures into your submission box. And that'll kind of throw off the look of your information because once you paste it and you save, those hidden figures are actually going to show up as symbols and letters and numbers that don't fit in correctly. So we encourage that when you paste to go ahead and take a quick look and make sure that everything pasted correctly. Or if you just want to skip that hassle, we strongly recommend that you paste just as plain text. So just by right clicking instead of clicking that paste, if you click that paste as plain text, it will automatically eliminate those hidden figures to kind of keep them out of the way. You'll also see just down here that there is on a couple sections, there's going to be a word or a number count. If it does not have a characters remaining count down there, it defaults to 4,000. But in this case, you can see the measure title has a character limit of about 1,400. Also, under each field, you're also going to have that view definition box, which if you click on it, will pop up that same information that we saw in the Word template. This is movable, so you can move it around as you like. And then, as I mentioned, there's some additional information. So if you're not 100% sure what should be in that field, this will help give you a little bit of context. And also there are some resources in there available as well as needed. There are going to be also some questions that throughout are going to have like a pop-up. So as you answer a question, it'll pop up additional questions. A good example of that's going to be the characteristics, and we're going to come to that. And it'll be this question is this measure in the CMS measures inventory? If we would click yes, you'll see that another question pops up for us to put in a CMS ID number. So in this case, we would then put in the CMS ID number of whatever that is, or if it's no, we would click no, and you see that it pops away. Let's say that you want to add more than one submitter to this measure. Maybe that you have a group of people that you want to work together to kind of help, fill out this form. We're going to come up to stewards and we'll go to submitter information. And if we scroll to the bottom, you're going to see this section of other merit users who will contribute to this measure. It's optional, it's not required, but if you have other people you would like to add on, this is where you would do it. I just want to mention as well that any co-submitter that you're going to add must have a Merit account, and Merit does not let you know when someone else is working on that same measure. So please collaborate within yourselves to make sure that you're both working or both not working on the same measure at the same time without knowing. Process is really easy though. You'll see right away who the submitter is. In this case, it's my demo version. Just below that, you will see this will be where it lists who else has access to this measure. Right now, there are none. So all you would have to do is click on this box, and you're just going to search for the person. So I'm going to type in my account. And once you type it in, you'll click the add button. You'll see that I actually pop up into that second tab. From there, you'll click the save and continue. And then they should now have access to this measure. Moving on to the attachments real quick. As we move to the attachment sections, I just want to reemphasize what Mel talked about earlier, that CMS does recommend that all applicable attachments be 508 compliant. However, CMS will still accept those attachments that are not submitted in the 508 compliance. If you need a template of the measures information form, you are able to download it right here. You also can see once you upload a attachment, you'll see it here in this middle section of current attachments. You'll see the title. You also have an option to change the attachment if you'd like, or you can delete it. There's also a comment section if you would like to add some additional context of what this attachment is to kind of help the reviewers, that can be put right there. We had a couple questions asked about, is there like an attachment limit? There's no max limit to attachments that you can have, but I do want to mention that the uploads can only be done in sections of 25 megabytes at a time. So if you have, for example, like one attachment, or you have 5 that all total at or under 25 megabytes, they can be uploaded as once. Once it's uploaded, the system can hold as much of attachments as you need for your measure, but to upload it, they have to be kind of done in that segments of 25 megabytes until everything's uploaded. So now that we have the top sections completed, we've added our attachments. Next section is going to be the submitter's comments. Before we go and review and submit, you can actually use this section to add any additional information that you might feel is relevant for CMS programs to know when considering your measure. This is a great time to explain any information, or if you feel that you would like to add context to something that you were not able to do earlier in the submission, this would be the time to do that. Once all your fields have been completed and you've reviewed it by you and your team, you feel it's time to go ahead and review, we're going to go to this review and submit button. Before we submit a measure, you actually must run a submission check for errors. This is just another way to kind of check to make sure that you've met all your required fields. If you're missing something, it'll actually flag with a red error and it'll pop up like a little triangle on the navigation menu. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the check submissions for error button and we'll see what comes up. So it actually looks like when I ran it, that there's something wrong and it looks like it's with the measure description. So there's two different ways to get to it. You can use the menu up here, or if you just click on this button, it'll actually take you directly to where the issue is. And it looks like I missed a field. So it looks like I did not add a description. So it's telling me that I need to complete this to be able to submit. So I'm just going to go ahead and just put demo in this. You can kind of see that that red box kind of popped away. So it looks like I've completed that. So I'm going to come down and I'm going to click that save and continue. I'm going to come up here and click save first. And then now that I saved it, I should be able to then submit my measure. So once it saves, I just want to go back to the review and submit to show you. Originally, the button was grayed out and we couldn't submit. But now we should be able to go ahead and click that submit button. It should pop up for us to click. So you can see here that there was no errors. At this point, we can go ahead and click that submit button. Once I actually complete this and I submit it, let's say after you submitted your measure, you received a notification that someone reviewing your measure left you a comment and or you would like to edit something in your measure. How do you do that? I'm going to transition over to that demo too real fast. So if a reviewer would like to request a clarification or you need to update something, they're going to add a comment directly to Merit. So you'll get an email that a reviewer has put a comment for you to review. And as I mentioned on the My Submissions, if you scroll down to the bottom, there's an activity section where you'll actually see comments that are made. In this case, it looks like for this measure, the reviewer asked that we update the measure title to be a little bit more descriptive. So what we need to do, we're going to scroll up to the top and there's a request change button. Anything after you submit has to go through a request change process, so this will look the same regardless. So I'm going to click the request change button. And it's going to look very, very similar to what you originally were using as you're submitted. The only difference is you're going to see to the right, there's a change request button. So you're going to want to find whatever section or field that you need to update. In my case, it's the measure title. So I'm going to click the change request button. And as I do that, you're going to see there's an original section, which will show you the original title. There's going to be a new value where you'll put in your new updated title and a reason for change request. So why are you making this change? So I'm going to go ahead and just call this a more descriptive demo title. And the reason for the change request, because a reviewer had requested it, I'm just going to put a reviewer requested. And once you do that, there's going to be a submit change request button up here. All you're going to have to do is you're just going to click that and it's going to save it. It's going to ask you if this is what you want to do, and it's going to say that it needs to be approved by CMS program. We'll go ahead and click that submit button. It'll then pop up and let you know that your change request was successful, and it should pop up now that you've made that change. What I like to do at this point is I like to recommend that you go back to that My Submissions tab. After you made that change, and you go back down to that comment, you'll notice that change, there's a new notification that requested a change. I also like going and clicking the reply button, just mentioning that you've made that update. So you can just put measure title has been updated. This just kind of helps close that loop and make sure that if there's more communication down the road, you kind of have that communication trail and just make sure that everybody's on the same page. So with that, I actually will conclude the demo portion of the webinar, but before I close the screen, I just want to check in with Haley to see if we have any questions or anything while we're screen sharing, if there's anything we need to go back over.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jake. We do have a few questions on the demo, but before I jump into those, I do just want to take a minute to invite our attendees here to our April information session. It's going to be an introduction to Measure Authoring Development Integrated Environment, or the MADI tool. And that's on April 24th at 2 p.m. Eastern. So if you'd like to join for that, we will include a link in the chat for more information there. And with that, turning to a few questions for you, Jake. So can you show me how I can print a PDF of my submission again?
Yeah. So the best way to get a copy of what you submitted is to use that export feature. So I'll go back to the demo 1. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on the edit real quick. So on this screen, as I mentioned, after you put everything in, there's going to be this export button here. So I'll go ahead and click on it. And once you do that, it's going to download everything as it shows up in the system. So you'll see the measure title here, the description, here's the demo that we put in, shows the program, it shows everything that you have submitted. I do just want to note again that because your export is a PDF, please make sure that everything you want is correct in the Merit tool, just because there's not an easy way to edit the PDF export without fixing it in Merit and then re-exporting.
Great, thank you. And just a reminder, if anyone has a question, to add it into the Q&A. We do have another question on the demo. Is there a prompt or an alert that will inform you to save information if you move to the next section without saving?
Yep. So again, Merit does not have a prompt or alert that reminds you to save. That's why it's really important that as you kind of finish the section, or if you go ahead and you put in like a really long paragraph or whatever, it's best just to go ahead and click that save as often as you can, just because again, technology doesn't always work as we like it, or maybe power goes out or something like that. It's just good to always have that save, so then if something does happen, you're safe. But again, if there's 2 different ways, you can click the save button up here, or if you scroll to the bottom, there's going to be that save and continue. So there's 2 different ways, top and bottom. So regardless of where you're at, you should be able to find a save button.
Great, thank you so much for answering that. We have another question for you, Jake, on the demo. Can you clarify that if I type my responses in Word and paste them into CMS Merit with the system, will the system retain my text formatting?
Yes, CMS Merit does support the text formatting. With that being said, again, it should always be the best practice that once you paste and save, to then review what you pasted. Again, with those hidden figures, sometimes they come up, sometimes they don't. But it's always just best to know. And again, you'll know if they're there or not, because after you paste and save, and you go back to review, you're going to notice that there's, weird symbols or things that just don't look right. You also, if you have like the spell check on, it'll actually pop up there too. If you notice that you're getting those more often than not and they're kind of annoying, or if you just want to avoid that issue all in general, you could just use that paste as plain text by, again, right-clicking your mouse and then just clicking that paste as plain text button. That will make sure that there are no hidden figures that will be added to your submission.
Wonderful. Thank you for that clarification. We have a question. Can you demonstrate how to add a co-submitter again so that multiple people can access the submission in progress?
Yeah. So again, if you want to add a co-submitter, you're going to come down to the steward section, and then you're going to go to submitter information. The submitter's information will scroll down to the bottom here, and it's going to be the question of other merit users who will contribute to this measure. So again, it's going to show you who created the measure. In this case, I created this measure, so it's going to show up here. Because when I just did the original demo, I didn't click the save button. It's not showing me down here again. But from here, it's going to show you who did you give co-submitting access to. So again, to do that, you need to make sure that your co-submitter has a merit account. And then all you're going to do is you're just going to search by whatever their username is. So my username is going to be WebJE, and I'll click on that. Once you put it in here, there's going to be a plus add button. And then if you click on that, it's going to pop up and it's going to show you who has access to this page. You can have multiple people, but again, just as a reminder, the more people you add in, just make sure that you guys coordinate internally to make sure that you guys are both not working on the same measure at the same time and overriding each other and not saving your submissions.
Great, thank you. And we have a really good question on attachments. So is there a limit to the number of documents I can attach to my submission, or a file size limit for attachments?
Yeah, so again, with the attachments, and I want to re-clarify this a little bit, there is not a limit of the number of documents you can have in your total measure, but or file size, but to be able to upload. So down here, if I do the browse files, I can only upload 25 megabytes at a time. But once it's actually onto the system, you can have as much as you need. So as long as you're doing segments of 25 megabytes to upload, you can have as much as you need for your measure once it's in the system.
Great, thank you for your response there. We have a question for Mel. Can you remind the attendees the deadline for measure submission?
Hi, yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, that's a good question. So we are going to close merit this year on May 10th at 8 p.m. Eastern time. And so Battelle will have staff available up until the point that merit closes. But keep in mind, you should not wait until the last day for your measure submission. You should go in advance just to avoid any complications or any issues that might arise. Because although there will be support, we don't want you to get into a situation where you can't fully submit by the deadline. So just keep that in mind. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that guidance. All right. I don't see any other questions filtering in. So just a reminder again, we added that April information session link into the chat if you're interested in registering. And I will pass it back to Jake to wrap things up.
Great. Thank you so much, Haley. Can we go ahead and go to the next slide, please? And again, if you go through and you have any questions related to today's presentation, or as you go through the process throughout the next couple of weeks, if you have any questions, please email us at mmssupport@battelle.org. We will have this recording up in the following couple of weeks, so keep an eye out on that. And again, Thank you so much for coming out today, and have a great rest of your week. Thank you.